again to Geeks Not Nerds, the podcast. I'm Captain Logan.
And I am the incredible Vince.
Vince, today we're going to talk about supervillains. And we're going to talk about big world domination plots and motivations.
Maybe some big world domination supervillains.
Exactly. Motivations for big, huge supervillains. Now, I can't think of a single time in the actual history of the world in which a grown man has put on tights and a cape and a mask and acted all evil and tried to take over the entire world, Vince.
I can think of something like it.
Yeah?
He put on armor and such and tried to take over the world.
Who's that?
Genghis Khan.
That's true. But how many times in the history of the world has there been that one big supervillain type who tried to take over the whole world, right? Well, there have been a few.
Yeah.
Most of the time they've been political powers.
That's true. Genghis and Hitler and well, my cousin, but nobody really paid attention to him.
Nobody remembers that. He didn't get very far, is the thing.
I'm kidding. I don't have a cousin. Yes, I do, but he didn't try to take over the world.
No. But he thought about it. I don't know. I guess the reason I was thinking about this after you came up with the idea to talk about world domination plots is the first thing I thought of was, why do we feel the need to have so many villains who want to take over and or destroy the world?
I think it's an easy threat. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, well, and the other thing too is, and we hear this a lot from comic fans, who, especially people who see superhero movies, and they don't like it when you've got a superhero who puts on a costume, but he doesn't fight a super villain. The idea being that if you have a superhero, he needs to he needs to have a match, so he needs to fight a super villain, and so if you've got somebody with amazing powers trying to save the world. It's going to be kind of boring if he doesn't go up against someone with amazing powers trying to do the exact opposite.
I disagree that... Well, this is neither here nor there, but I don't see why that has to happen. But that is a logic that some people have.
Yeah, sure, yeah. So you don't think that has to happen? I mean, if you have a superhero... Okay, I mean, if you have just a character with either no powers who wears a costume or not real powerful... Not physically really powerful, that it would make sense that his foe would be just like a corporate guy in a suit or a mob boss or something like that. But you don't. There's a reason that people complain that there's too much Lex Luthor in the Superman movies and not enough of bad guys who can actually fight Superman, because ultimately the Lex Luthor of the Superman movies to a lot of people doesn't feel like he's enough of a threat.
Well, no, but there's a very different kind of Lex Luthor.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I would even argue that the Lex Luthor in Superman Returns is as much of a movie as I didn't like that movie. I think they didn't go far enough to make this guy more of a threat. They were still trying to hold too true to Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I much prefer, and I mean, this is neither here nor there, but I much prefer a Lex who tries to destroy Superman emotionally more than physically. You know what I mean? If he can get the world to turn against Superman, then that's gonna fulfill his plans a lot more than, I mean, the classic Lex Luthor, of course, wants to destroy Superman, but I think the more complicated Lex Luthor wants to destroy Superman both figuratively and literally, right? Mm-hmm. Where he wants the world to love him more than Superman. And if he can get people thinking, Superman's too powerful for his own good, you people shouldn't trust him, then that's going to damage him in certain ways even more than Kryptonite can.
I'm telling you, you'll like All-Star Superman.
I've read about half of it so far.
Oh, sweet. Well, then never mind.
I find it very strange.
It is very strange. That's why I like it.
It's good. But it's bizarre. There's some weird stuff in it.
It's some of the art, I think, is a little horror inspired, just a little odd.
I thought so too. Yeah.
You have all this classic stylings that Frank Quitely puts in from the way Superman is idealized to look, but then you have certain alien creature type designs that are they are bizarre. I mean, I think that's the best word to put it. Either that or they're just straight up frightening. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking more of the human bomb in the first issue.
Yeah, right. Well, and I'm even thinking of some of the covers. I mean, that it's like two or three with the big Superman hunched over his lab table. You know what I'm talking about in the fortress, and it looks very like Frankenstein's monster.
It reminds me of a cover you might see back in the 50s from EC titles.
Oh yeah.
So it's just composed that way. You know, the fearful character in the foreground and the dark lurking character in the background.
But back to the topic at hand. So
we were talking about the hand. No.
So you don't think that supervillains, if they're fighting a character who's like really really powerful, have to have a world domination plot?
I don't think they should have to, but
no, I don't either necessarily.
In fact, I think the better motivations don't, because see, my major curiosity on this point is why do they want to rule the world?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what motivation is there for that? I mean, do you really think that ruling the world is something you could do for a prolonged period of time before somebody realizes there's only one of you and everybody bum rushes you and kills you?
Yeah, that's true. Once again, not to make this all about Lex, but what's interesting about Lex always wanting to rule the world is that he does it because he feels like he's the only one who can, and that he can bring order to chaos in a way that Superman can't. Superman can rule through physical power, but he doesn't have the intellect like Luthor does, and so Superman may have his ideals and his morality, but in the end, is that really enough to rally everyone together versus Lex, who could become a dictator and has he thinks the intellect to actually make the world a better place. It's really interesting. So what I like when it comes to world domination plots, and I'm with you, I don't think we always need them. Mm-hmm. What I like with world domination plots is when you have a character who really thinks that not only they can rule the world, but they ought to. I think that's interesting, and I mean we've done videos talking about villain motivations before, but this is specifically world domination. I mean, a lot of your really popular villains don't have this. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like the more generic villains have this, because, like you said, it's easy. It's easy for a writer to go, well, what does he want to do? He wants to rule the world. He wants to take, or he wants to take over the city.
I mean, because it's something that obviously a superhero would want to stop. I mean, if the guy has any capacity to do it and has any means beyond what the average law enforcement could take care of, so therefore you have a superhero comic cut and dry and ready to publish in the month. So
sure, yeah, absolutely. I mean, most of the time, your really human villains have a much smaller goal, right? You got Mr. Freeze, who just wants to save his wife, but he does all these terrible things in the process, and you've got villains who might be just insane. I think insane is sometimes an easy out also. Mm-hmm. Why are they killing a bunch of people? Yeah, they're insane. Cletus Cassidy.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
Carnage, he's just
Joker.
Insane.
I mean,
the Joker. And there are more complex ways of doing the Joker, but yes.
There's a button series that came out, and I'm not sure why I called it a series, but there's a collection of buttons out there that have the face of a DC character and then something written underneath it as flavor text. So Superman has dual personalities, and the Penguin has morbidly obese. And the Joker has just crazy. And it kind of bothers me. I think they could have come up with something better than that. I expected just crazy.
Yeah.
Because, they did so good of a job in the movie of making the character more complicated, more interestingly... having a more interesting psychology to him, that just calling him crazy doesn't seem to suffice.
Well, especially because he's so popular. It's like, how does a villain stay this popular for 70 years and his whole thing is, it's as easy as, he's just nuts. Mm-hmm. It's that easy. I don't know, it seems kind of unfair, right? I mean, because most of your heroes that have prolonged, that have lasted that long, we can point to much deeper reasons for why people love them and why they why they endure. They may be somewhat simple. Superman simply is a symbol of what a lot of people idealistically believe people should be fighting for. But that that makes a lot more sense why he would stick around than we like a villain because he's just nuts.
He just likes cashews.
What other villains always want to rule the world? Like their whole thing is I just want to take over the world. You got Doctor Doom.
Yeah,
who we've talked about.
He also thinks he ought to rule the world,
and he's got the same sort of thing with Lex Luthor too, right? The whole intellect thing.
Mm-hmm.
I should rule the world because I can. I'd be good at it.
I mean, if you look at the Secret Wars line where he managed to capture the powers of the Beyonder, and if you haven't read Secret Wars, I've just ruined it for you.
That's all right.
But he sort of becomes benevolent, and he decides that he's going to help heroes for a brief period of time before he loses control. So I think it's interesting that these people will, by any means necessary, they will commit murder, they will commit crimes against humanity. But in the end, some of these guys really just want to be in control and then help.
Yeah, and I think that's the difference between the ones that are as three-dimensional as you can make them and the more static ones. As much as I love Thanos, Thanos' whole thing is just, I want to be in control. But not the help part,
no.
Right? Thanos wants everything. He wants to be in control of everything. And kind of wants to destroy everything. And I mean, he's got that other motive of, I'm obsessed with death and I want to impress death. He's got that going on. But he's just power hungry.
I understand a supervillain that thinks he can manage to take control of the world and then try to rule it as some sort of leader. But I think it's strange that anybody would expect that they could rule the world and just use it as their personal plaything.
Yeah. Wouldn't you get bored?
It seems like it'd be difficult to hold on to, and eventually I really think that
that's why a lot of them try to become all-powerful. That's why, I mean, the way Thanos did it was with the Infinity Gauntlet. I mean, that's the power to do anything you want to. That's pure omnipotence.
The funny thing is, in my head, it makes sense that you really need to rule the world if you just rule the world around you, if that makes sense. Like, do you really need everybody to bow down and constantly worship you when you can just walk into a room and be like, you, give me a sandwich, and they go get you a sandwich because they know it's Thanos. Like, everybody know me, I'm going to kill everything if you don't get me a sandwich.
That's interesting. You're saying, you could just leave the world exactly the way it is and just walk around and get whatever you want because nobody can stop you.
I mean, you don't need to rob a bank. You just walk into Best Buy and say, that's a big TV. I like that TV.
True, but I think it's all about what you want out of it. I think with a lot of these sorts of characters who want everything, I think even sometimes maybe Mandarin is in this. It can be in this. Although I don't know a great deal about Mandarin, but he's got that thing too, right? Where he's got his rings that all have different powers, and so he can take whatever he wants. But I think a lot of the time it's as much about gaining respect as it is about having control. And so even if you don't care about the people who you are controlling, there's a difference between sitting on a throne and everyone knows that you're the guy in charge versus no one can stop you and you just walk into stores and steal sandwiches, like you were saying, right?
Yeah.
There's a different way people look at you, and I think part of the reason somebody might want to rule the whole world and have the power to control everything, because I think controlling the world is different than ruling it. Yeah. And I think the power to control everything and to be able to move pieces on a game board, let's say, like that. I think really is as much about how people look at you as it is anything else. I want reverence. I want God wants to be worshipped. Mm-hmm. And so anyone who has the audacity to try to become a god wants that also.
Something I want to touch on, and I'm not sure if 10 minutes is a good enough time to do it in, but the motivation for world destruction.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Let's go there.
See, I don't quite understand. Okay. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Now, assuming that the person is a resident of that world, why would he want to destroy the world? Well, there has to be some sort of suicidal drive, and he's like, well, I don't want to be here, but I really don't want the rest of you guys to be here either.
Right.
So, I suppose that's a logic behind it. There's a certain craziness to it.
I've used this example. I mean, I've said this before, but I love it. There's a line in an episode of the animated Spider-Man series from the '90s where the Kingpin is involved in this whole big plot, and somebody, I can't remember who it is. It might be the one with the spot. I can't remember, but there's this episode where someone in Kingpin's employ has done something that very much looks like it might lead to the destruction of the planet. And Spider-Man, or one of the other heroes in the episode, I think it was probably Spider-Man, is questioning why Kingpin is abandoning, the person that he'd hired, and why he's not going along with it. And Kingpin looks at him like he's nuts, and he's just like, and he says, "The destruction of the world is bad for business."
I like that.
And it is, because it is.
I mean, what business can you run after the apocalypse or the destruction of the world, rather?
Yeah. What's the point? I mean, I guess there have definitely been villains in the past who have that self-destructive nature. Mm-hmm. And they not only want to destroy themselves, but they want to bring as many people with them as they can. Like they're so jaded that they're like, if I gotta, if I want to die, I should also, I'm also going to bring people with me. It's like I want to die, and I have this vengeance issue.
I suppose that's why cults. I mean, why we have the joke about the tainted Kool-Aid. I don't know. Maybe that's not as popular of a joke as I think it is. But cults, they have the stereotype is they all pass around the poison Kool-Aid, and they all drink and they all die at the same time in some sort of big ceremony, because they're all going to go see an invisible man.
I see.
So they're all going to go to the movie theater and watch The Invisible Man.
And I mean, that's a different thing too, though, right? Because that's not even self-destructive so much as based on a belief system. Yeah. So, like, you believe that if you have such a strong belief that if you do this terrible thing to yourself or to others, then you will get this out of it.
I mean, but can you really say that
I want to die, or I want me to die and other people to die also, because not only do I want to die, but I also hate people.
I mean, the thing about it is that do we really expect a cult leader to this is getting to be kind of a disturbing conversation. Do we really expect a cult leader to be to acknowledge his own mythos that he created? I mean, do we really expect a person to say, I believe the crap I'm feeding to these people that I'm eventually going to lead to death?
Well, yeah, no, of course not. And in fact, there have been lots of stories written about the crazy cult leader who convinces a bunch of people to kill themselves, but then he doesn't do it also. Gul Dukat in Deep Space Nine did this in the last season of the series. But yeah, no. That's actually a classic villain motif. It's also one of the scarier ones. But that's a little bit on a smaller scale, right? Like,
yeah, I was just trying to make a link to the real world here.
Okay.
For whatever reason, I felt like it was important.
I'm just saying, I think that's a lot. I think that's a great deal different.
I mean, you're going down, and you're going to take other people with you,
right? Mm-hmm.
And that was the major point I was trying to deliver. I do think that motivation could exist. It's just in comic books we amp it up and make it a world scale problem.
Because it's always weird when you've got like kid shows where you've got a big villain, and they figure, okay, he's a villain, so he wants to destroy the world. And what's really weird is when you got the villains who can't decide which one they want to do. Like it's interchangeable. Taking the world is interchangeable with destroying the world. Sometimes I think it's odd that people don't like acknowledge how different of goals these are, right? Like when I reviewed the Power Rangers movie, yes, I'm going to bring this up. I mentioned that in two different scenes, the villain in that, Ivan Ooze, mentions ruling the world, and then another scene he's talking about destroying it. I think he even mentions destroying the universe. Like I don't know. The only way I can fathom that somebody, and that's just silly and inconsistent, but the only way I can fathom that a character would want to destroy the world, or heaven forbid, the whole universe, besides just being freaking crazy, insane, like Cletus Cassidy, Carnage, would be if they were somehow designed that way. like Doomsday, destructive force, who's created to destroy whatever's in his path, but not ambitious, right? Like somebody like Doomsday just destroys whatever's there. He's not. He doesn't have this ambition of I must destroy everything there is. There's this miniseries going on in Marvel right now that I've reviewed a couple issues of called Chaos War, where there's this big god called the Chaos King, and his whole thing is he wants to destroy everything there is, and it seems like it's just his destiny to do that. He's just the reason he wants the end of the world is because his name is Chaos King. Like that's it. That's the reason.
An interesting thing in Hellraiser. The Cenobites, which are the monsters that Hellraiser is famous for, Pinhead and such. Mm-hmm. The point that these people, their god, which is effectively Satan, Leviathan in Hellraiser, is like this being of ultimate order, and he sees like what we see as freedom, he sees as chaos. So what he's essentially doing is dragging people to hell, so that they can be put into an orderly fashion. And I forget why I brought this up, but it's like he's destroying the world that we exist in and creating his own.
Yeah, or is it that and I haven't seen the film, but classically, a lot of the times when you've got a character like that, they want to destroy the world because it's chaotic, and then hopefully a more orderly world will arise out of it.
Mm-hmm. And Marvel even had some counter comic books. Marvel had the Hellraiser comic books coming out, but then they had one in their regular continuity called the Harrowers, which was some people who were like angels and were fighting for chaos. So kind of an interesting subverted idea that we would traditionally apply to that. So yeah, thought I'd bring that up.
But yeah, I don't know. Wanting to end the world is just this big giant thing. Like it seems like you've got to either have no reason or a really good reason. Like there's nothing in the middle. Because this isn't the kind of thing where you're going to get a lot of henchmen to follow you. You know what I mean? like I want to destroy the whole world, and I need to hire some people to help me do that.
I think this is where we get into a lot of I don't know. I can't really think of people who just want to destroy the world, because I start thinking there's extraterrestrial threats. They want to destroy your world.
That's true. Most of the time, that's the case. Even like I said before, Power Rangers is that. It's always a space alien. It's never somebody on Earth. And in fact, the one time I can think of that it was, not that I know my Power Rangers all that well, but when they did Dino Thunder, it was actually kind of an interesting thing, because it was a human who had morphed kind of into a dinosaur-like creature and wanted to bring the world back to the age of the dinosaurs. And that was his whole plot. So it was actually more of a terrestrial kind of threat, which was unusual for that. But yeah, for the most part, when you're talking, you're absolutely right. When you're talking about wanting to destroy the world, it's usually from outside. Like
even if it's a supernatural threat, like a being from hell trying to destroy something else.
Yeah, how often is it just a human being? I'm trying to think. If I can think of any examples, I'm sure we're going to get some comments where people will think of some. Examples of a human...
Feel free, leave comments.
Yeah, please do. A human being who wants to actually destroy the whole world. I don't know. It doesn't happen a lot. And the only ones I'm thinking of are human beings who have become more than human. Mm-hmm. Where they were human, but then, we mentioned Carnage, but he's not even trying to destroy the world so much as just kill random people. Then there's this is a silly example too, but Callisto from Xena had this, where she was human, and then at one point she became a god, and she wanted to, because of all kinds of stuff that I won't go into, she always wanted to kill herself, but then she was kind of okay with the destruction of the world too, it seemed like. And but
one would naturally result in the other.
Obviously it wasn't really going after that until she had the powers to do so.
I wonder how many evil genius, not geniuses, but I wonder how many evil motivations there are out there, but people that have no means to subject the world to their will.
I would turn everyone into a dolphin if I could, but I just can't think of a way to do that. what about General Zod? There are obviously there's a lot of different incarnations of how Krypton is destroyed. One of them is, in fact, there's even variations on this. Is that one thing led to another, and Zod had his hand in destroying the world, but and he wouldn't have had superpowers at the time, and yet it wasn't really necessarily his intention to destroy the world. Like he always had ambitions of power, but I think like just he caused a lot of bad things to happen. It's like if we had blown ourselves up because of nuclear warheads, right?
And they did that in the DC comic book at one point.
Like with the Cold War, or even if, like, heaven forbid, Hitler had nukes. And had used them. I doubt that Hitler would have wanted the destruction of the world, but you could see how things could lead to other things in which he would inadvertently end up doing that. So I don't know. I suppose there are examples where a human ends up destroying a world or comes close, but not necessarily that was their intention.
I suppose it might be easier to rebuild a wasteland than it is to take it over.
Yeah, that's true. Oh yeah, man. Maybe he would have. I don't know.
But I guess maybe you need people to rebuild. I mean, it's hard to get just Dick and Jane out in the middle of a field and say, "All right, start over."
Well, Vince, we're out of time for the podcast. Let's go ahead and do 2-minute rants real quick, and I guess I'll start. This actually goes a little bit into what we were talking about. I saw a video today by Zip Block Gory, who often will do short videos talking about news in comics, and he mentioned that both DC and Marvel are about to do big arcs, bringing back big cosmic type villains from the 90s, and Marvel's going to do another big Onslaught arc apparently, and DC is going to do another big Doomsday thing. And he was talking about how he wishes that and I agree with him 100% on this, that he wishes the two big companies would try to get a little bit out of the 90s and try to create some more new stuff. It's like they're a little bit too stuck in Nostalgiaville right now, and they're just putting out things with characters people recognize and hoping people will buy it based on remembering what they liked from the 90s. And I have to say I really agree with that. My rant is I wish that that Marvel and DC would try to create some new characters, because, and I think maybe I've mentioned this before, but it's weird because as I was thinking about this with Onslaught and Doomsday, I was like, there were a bunch of new characters created in the 90s that we're still using now. And we haven't been having much of that lately. Not much. And, like, anytime it happens, it seems like it gets... I don't know, lately it seems like any character that ends up getting really big who wasn't before actually already existed, but they just hadn't really been brought to the forefront before. It doesn't seem like we've had a lot of real new creations that people do a lot with. I mean, if you think about, especially, with Superman, I mentioned Doomsday, but I mean, like, the Death of Superman arc created 3 or 4 really big characters that kept being used afterwards. The same Superboy is still being used today. Steel came out of that. A lot of these it still got big because of that. There was a bunch of that going on, and Rob Liefeld created lots of stuff with X-Men that got used later, during the 90s. So I agree with him. I'm not saying that the Onslaught or Doomsday should never have come back necessarily, but I mean, Doomsday's been used tons of times, and like Ziploc Glory mentioned, he's become kind of a pansy where anybody can beat him, and he, considering he beat Superman, he needs to be this giant force. Because the thing is, every time he gets killed, you can't kill him the same way, so he should get more powerful, not less so. And the only reason he's less so is because how can you keep using him if he's that hard to beat? Well, that means that we should use him sparingly, obviously. So I don't know. We need to get some new characters, and B, we need to do stories that make sense, not just stories that have certain characters on a cover, hoping that people will buy them that maybe haven't bought comics in a while. That's my whole rant.
Cool. Something's been bothering me, and it is, why is it that, well, at least not so much recently, but at one point in time, there was just a slew of covers on comic books that had nothing to do with the inside. Like,
I've still been seeing that lately a little bit.
Yeah, it used to be really bad a couple of years ago, where I bought the Marvel Knights 4, Fantastic Four, and I thought the series was great. I really enjoyed it. However, most of the covers were just them in some sort of a position looking at a screen, or looking at the camera, we're going to call it. And that was it. Then you open the book and you get in the story and wow. The only thing the cover had to do with the book was it featured the characters. I mean, they do a lot with the Ultimate FF. They did a lot of the same thing, which was just putting them in unique poses and then saying, look at us, we're the Fantastic Four on the cover of our own book. Really? You see, it's one of the interesting things that that cover that we talked about earlier in All-Star Superman, where Lois is looking suspiciously back at a very dark and suspicious Superman.
Which looks different in the comic, but actually happens.
Yeah, I mean, the point is that they build tension with that, and when you get in the comic...
Plus, it has everything to do with the issue.
Yeah, and it doesn't give away anything. I mean, let's get some clever covers.
Let me ask you this: does it bother you? Because you're talking mostly about covers where it's just random and doesn't have to do with the issue. Does it bother you also when something is on the cover that has to do with the issue, but never actually happens in the book, where it looks really epic or whatever, and then it looks like it's just something they kind of blew out of proportion, or it never actually happens?
You know, that's something that bothers me all the time. It's like even in movie trailers, if they have something in the movie trailer and then it never appears in the theatrical feature, that annoys me. I'm like,
can I give you a couple of quick recent examples?
Go for it.
I know we're a little over time, but you just brought this up and it's really interesting. Recent examples just from this week. The new Brightest Day cover, number 16. The cover is this big epic looking battle between Aquaman and the new Aqualad, and it says Aquaman versus Aqualad. That never happens in the issue.
Yeah.
You know, the issue is not about a giant fight between the two. There's tension between them, and there's the beginnings of maybe a fight, but they get over it. There isn't this big epic fight between them. And besides, who's going to win in the fight between Aquaman and Aqualad? I think it's going to be Aquaman.
Superman.
Really.
That's who's going to win.
And then in Birds of Prey, they're doing this arc right now called The Death of Oracle. And it's a figurative death where Barbara Gordon is thinking about dropping the mantle of Oracle because she's afraid that too many people have heard of Oracle, so people are going to get killed that she knows because she's becoming more and more associated with it.
God forbid somebody kill Batman. I'm just saying.
But then the cover is Batman standing, is Bruce Wayne Batman standing next to a headstone that says Oracle. Here lies Oracle, and that's not bad necessarily. It's a cool looking cover, and once you've read the issue, it's not. I don't feel like it's necessarily trying to get you to think that Barbara Gordon's gonna die, but still, like, once you've read it. But before you've read it, like, don't you think maybe it's there just to entice people to get it because maybe a character's dying? I don't know.
I'd feel ripped off if I got into that book and she didn't die. I'd be like, I bought this because she was going to die because I thought it was a milestone landmark issue, and you guys lied to me.
I mean, if you've been keeping up and you know stuff, you would probably not make that leap. But still, like, how are we going to get new readers if we jerk them around like that? So I don't know. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get into all that, but. Your rant is really good and interesting.
Rant topic for next week.
Maybe so, man. Maybe so. Well, hey, we're well over time, but thanks a lot for listening to Geeks Not Nerds, the podcast, and we'll have another podcast for you next time. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Vince.